Hello, my name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to the AstroHistorian. This is a channel dedicated to exploring and explaining the lore of sci-fi and space universes and discussing their impact. Today, I bring you another lore tour from the floor of IAE 2954. Yeah, I just did that. I'm joining by a bunch of folks here live as a live stream over here. These folks who decided to come join me here. And we are going to be talking about RSI, the old man of the space of the space universe of the UAE of humanity when it comes to space and exploration and space colonization and spaceship building. So, yeah. Did I hit the right sounds? Did I get it in time? I did. Okay, good. So, let's get started with a little bit of a background on RSI. People had asked me to kind of look at the ships a little bit more when I'm talking, so now you can see the ships in the background, and we'll move a little bit closer so that you can see the glory of all these different ships. So go stand up over to here. So, RSI. The thing we have to understand about RSI is that it is old. It was founded in 2038. 2038 by a man by the name of Chris Roberts, not the same Chris Roberts that is in Star Citizen, but a different Chris Roberts. And initially, Chris Roberts struggled to get his idea off the ground. He wanted to create an aerospace company, but he didn't have any sort of connections, and was getting his ass kicked by the other commercialization space groups out there. So instead, he worked on things that would support space colonization. There was a lot of issues going on Earth at the time. Specifically, this was called the overpopulation era, where environmental change caused resource shortages, combined with large populations that existed, which were overextending the amount of resources that were needed, caused resource wars and other conflicts that would break out all across the planet. And so that's odd. So I was going to say the main focus that Chris Roberts had with Roberts Space Industries was to support life on Earth building technologies which would also be useful in space. So things like efficient power grids, let's make sure I'm live in here. There we go. Power grids and cricket farms for dealing with food shortages, and there's a bunch of things that he did. And but he never really was able to get into space or to build rockets or anything else like that. And it wasn't until the late 21st century, in the 2070s, when he met a man by the name of Dr. Scott Childress. And Dr. Scott Childress was a young, up-and-coming engineer who was exploring a newly discovered element, another particle called the quantum particle, or the quantum, or quantanium is really what it was called. Now, quantanium was this sort of element that was captured through transisotopes, so radioactive isotopes, in the wild, and they could farm it using colliders, particle colliders, but it was very small amounts. So they were experimenting with this to see what they could do with it. And Dr. Childress came up with the idea of harnessing the mass manipulating powers of quantanium to basically build the long theorized warp drive, an Alcubierre drive. So he took quantanium, combined it with the theories from Alcubierre, and created what he called the quantum fusion engine, using fusion power combined with the quantanium to create a bubble around a ship to allow it to warp space and allow you to travel from one point to another much faster. So quantanium became this real big potential game changer in terms of travel, but because Dr. Childress was just a young engineer, he didn't have a lot of clout, and not a lot of people wanted to take a risk. But Chris Roberts, now a much older man, saw the potential, talked to Dr. Childress, and funded his project to create the first quantum drive. And it worked and was revolutionized how humanity traveled. And of course, it was this meant that Roberts Space Industries was the only company that could build quantum drives. Now, eventually, the secrets would be cracked by other countries on the planet, but this led to the colonization of Mars and the expansion into space, because now it became super cheap and easy to go into the distant parts of the solar system. And that led to the second challenge of RSI, which was terraforming. They developed the system called the Atmo processors, which we see modern versions of in Squadron 42. There's a scene in Squadron 42 where you hear the old man say, oh, these are Atmo processors. I don't really know the technology. Webb tried to explain it to me at one point. And those gigantic stations. They sit just above the atmosphere of most planets, and what they do is they collect the atmosphere and then they convert the atmosphere. So they slowly change the atmosphere from one to another, and the problem is that each planet is unique, so they have to be dialed in for every specific planet. But that, along with those gigantic lasers that we've seen in the Arena Commander Broken Moon, that's also a thing to sort of warm up, melt ice caps and warm up planets. These sorts of technologies were being developed by RSI to terraform Mars, which they did successfully. There was an accident which happened during the initial terraformation, which caused hundreds of people to die. I think it was like thousands of people to die when it was in the process of being terraformed, and it was likely caused by the use of a malfunctioning AI. But then they went back at it and eventually did terraform Mars, proving that they had the ability to do so. Then after quantum travel, or after jump points were discovered, RSI led the charge again to create the very first jump-capable ship, with a ship designed with the jump drive in mind, which was called the X-7. The X-7 is the forebearer of the Aurora. So the original X-7 looks a lot like what the Aurora looks like today. So that's where the Aurora comes from in terms of design language. Needless to say, RSI became the major ship manufacturer and basically space technology creator, from everything from spacesuits to even underwear. They make a lot of stuff, and they still do today, and they've been around since 2038. They have several different divisions. They have like a civilian division, they have a military division, they have a heavy ships division. Each division, they have a technologies division. Each division has its own specific lane. I'm going to read their actual statement. Okay. They have a saying, they have a philosophy. The founding philosophy of RSI, which is continued today, is learn from the past, reach for the future, fuel innovation, cultivate talent, and always be relevant. That was the founding philosophy of RSI. They have a total of 5 development teams. They have the Astro development team, or the ADT. They have the capital development team, the CDT, the engine development team, the EDT, the experimental development team, the XDT, and the Future Foundation. The ADT works on civilian-focused stuff like the Zeus was the first ship that was ever produced by RSI under the ADT. This is sort of a civilian stuff, and we'll talk about the Zeus in a moment. The capital development team built things like the Bengal and the Polaris were developed under the capital development team. Engine development team were teams that focused on engine technologies, especially jump and quantum tech. Experimental development team would build experimental stuff, often would be taking in they're like skunk works. They would take capture technologies from other civilizations and try to reverse engineer them and try to improve technologies of humanity. So like the XDT was very important during the First Tavaran War to understand how shields function, the efficient shield tech of the Tavaran worked. And the Future Foundation was created during the Mezer era after the Anthony Tanaka incident, which RSI wanted to separate itself from the Mezer era, the Mezer regime, to try to be more to make sure that no living conditions and working conditions in their factories, even their subsidiaries, was up to their standards. So they give and also do things like charitable foundations and grants to promote education, new research, and even provide housing opportunities. It's sort of like a philanthropic branch of RSI. They've continued to be relevant throughout the years, though during the Mezer era they did lose a lot of favor. And when the Mezers actually fell in 2792, the RSI came into the rescue and fixed the problems with a lot of with what was going on in the UE at the time, and were sort of unofficially the ones to start building new capital ships, which I think will lead us to the Polaris. So let's start off with looking at the Polaris here. So this bad boy, very bad boy, dangerous boy, is the Polaris. The Polaris got a long history of failures and it's a history of mistakes that eventually were rectified. Not by RSI, but by the UEE. This ship was originally supposed to be built in the 26th century, the middle of the 26th century, 2550s. In the post-Tavaran War era, they needed a small patrol ship that was a corvette that could explore and protect border systems, especially the new secured systems that the humanity had now fully controlled because of its expansive military. But that ship was originally going to be the Idris. But when the Mezers got a hold of it, they kind of added a gun to it, increased the size, so it eventually became a frigate. Then when they decided they were going to actually build the Corvette after the Second Tavaran War, they tapped Case Aerospace, the progenitor of Anvil Aerospace, to build the Corvette. But then Leonard Case died, so that Corvette was never built. And since then, the Corvette kind of languished the Corvette program languished in obscurity until the end of the Tavaran War, until the end of the Mezer era, at the 2972 or 2792, changed the new to a new UEE, who then were strapped for cash, so they couldn't build the dang thing. It took the attack on Vega to finally motivate the UEE to fully fund a Corvette program, which they gave to RSI because RSI was really taking over the role of building capital ships after Aegis fell out of favor. And as a result, we have the Polaris. Now, the Polaris is named after Hester Polaris, who was a UEE war or UPE war hero from the First Tavaran War. She was a Corvette captain. Her Corvette, the Gilchrist, managed to uncover a invasion force of Tavaran in a system they weren't supposed to be in. And when they discovered this system, they also discovered that, surprise, they had also been boarded by the elite boarding forces of the Tavaran called the Naule. If you want to know a little bit more about them, I talked about them in the last lore tour. But the captain, Hester Polaris, managed to hand-to-hand, close-quarter combat experts, while also commanding her ship to do hit-and-run attacks against the Tavaran fleets, cutting them off and preventing them from breaking away to attack civilian targets, and held out for long enough that the UPE fleet would arrive, a Navy fleet would arrive and drive the Tavaran off. And just after they arrived, she died of her injuries that she had sustained during the whole conflict. An absolute, utter badass. Hester Polaris is an insane life story, who you'll learn a little bit more about in the next Complete History of Star Citizen lore video. It's a little plug that's going to be coming out soon. So that's why she's named after her. And so most of the Polarises are actually named after UEE war heroes. This ship is a Corvette, but even a Corvette, you can see the size of this thing. It has a capital class power plant because it's designed that speed is its armor. It's not very tough. comparative to other capital ships. Its shields are pretty good, but generally speaking, it's not going to survive much of a brawl with larger capital ships. So its main advantage is it's built around this gigantic capital class power core and engines to allow it to be speedy and maneuverable to get into position. Its main armament comes from the front torpedoes, which I always get wrong. I want to say they're they're like size 10s, but someone always corrects me. I don't ever get the sizes right with this. I'll look it up real quick. Size 10. 28 size 10 capital killer torpedoes. Those things are nasty. When they can hit an unshielded target, they just destroy a target if they hit them. Plus 2 bespoke size 10 ballistic cannons here in the front, manned by an operator, which can pack a absolute mean punch. That's not mentioning the 4 size 4 quad turrets on the top and the sides, and the bespoke the remote turrets in the back, including 1 missile turret. Yeah, those are size 6. Did I say something else? Size 6. Didn't mean to say anything else. I really did. Oh, did I say cannon size 10? Okay, cannons are size 6, not size 10. The torpedoes are size 10, okay? Slack off on me there, chat. All right. That's the Polaris. It's been available since 2945, so it's a more recent edition. It's been in production since then. I think the first ones are coming out just now, probably in the last, especially for civilians, because they did allow for civilians to purchase these through the Militia Mobilization Initiative, which was designed to give the average citizen more weapons. So. The size the rear turrets are all 4 size 3, so they're just a little bit smaller than the middle sized. Let me make sure I was right on that one. Are they size 5s? No. Oh, they're all size 3s. They're size 3s, not size 4s. I thought they were size 4s. Interesting. Anyways, so all of the turrets were size 3s, by the way. This is the reason why I don't give a lot of specifics unless I have absolute assurity on these things, because I always get them wrong. All right, welcome to the Zeus. Let's go outside real quick before we come inside. This is, I believe, the CL. Into the front. So, there's some misnomer about this because I think a lot of people are confused. This is the Mark II Zeus. The original Zeus was produced in the early days of human space flight. And specifically, put this up here. Find the actual link. 2075 was when they created the first quantum capable. 2136 was when they were producing the Zeus. The original Zeus was designed as the Model T of spaceships. It was designed to be sorry, the AI is throwing me off here next to keep talking. The original Zeus was designed to be a Model T of starships because it was supposed to be the everyman ship. Maybe not everyman. It was designed to be affordable for commercial availability, to bring quantum travel capable spacecraft to the masses. And it was big compared to the Zeus Mark II. And it wouldn't exist without the work of Michelle Seleno, or Sal, as she's called. She was a test pilot who famously had pushed new records for quantum travel past Jupiter. And she was a military pilot who wanted to sort of bring into being a new, I'm trying to think, she was afraid that civilian spacecraft and civilian piloting would surpass that of the military. So she wanted to have a new generation of pilots, but the military wasn't going to give her a new generation of pilots to figure out how to improve space flight. So she turned to RSI because RSI needed help with their Zeus program, because their first and in 2136 on specifically May 23rd, June 23rd, 2136. The first test pilot of the Zeus, the first test flight of the Zeus, took off and exploded. Live TV. Everyone saw it. It was a giant embarrassment for RSI, especially after the failure of the Mars terraformation project in 2125. This was like double egg on their face because they were the ones in charge of that program too. So they turned to Sal to specifically have her expertise in how ships function and piloting ships, and she agreed to do it as long as that they pressured the military to create her test pilot program, which they did, creating the what's called the test. The placeholder name was the 999th. It was just a placeholder. That was the squadron, and it eventually would turn into the standard designation for the test squadron of the UAE, the 999th Test Squadron. They're called the Reckless, not necessarily because they're reckless in terms of taking unnecessary risks. Reckless is in they've never crashed. So they're very good pilots in what they do, and they're very skilled at what they do. But it all starts with Michelle Salsaleno, who helped build the original Zeus and actually was the first test pilot of the Zeus, and it was successful. The first piloting of the Zeus was successful. It turned out amazingly, and it became iconic. And she was the one who actually designed the new space frame, completely overhauling the space frame from what it was. So fast forward to today, 30th century. RSI is looking to sort of get in on the medium, large ship category. Their Constellation series is doing pretty well. So they turn back and look at the original Zeus and decide to take the Zeus concept and update it for the 30th century. And that's what we have here today. The Zeus Mark II. People are confused about the Mark II because they're like, oh, well, there was an original Zeus. Yes, there was never an original Zeus for sale in Star Citizen because the original Zeus was built in the 22nd century, like 700 years before. So, all right, let's look inside here because this is the Zeus Clipper. So the Zeus CL is unique because it has its own cargo bay. So this cargo bay is an extended cargo bay compared to most of the other Zeuses out there. It is you can still get access to most of the components, but you do have some, extended cargo areas. Then inside here we have a living quarters. On the left we've got the beds, 4 beds plus lockers and other things. And then on the right, I believe this is the recreation area, including a nice little window there, plus some like a kitchen. We've got engineering bay, includes all of the parts, the shield generator, batteries, gravity generators. It has suit lockers, and then it has a like an EVA airlock region. That's not opening for me. And then we got the pilot seats, including weapon racks and more life support and shield generators and such. So that is the Zeus. I'm gonna go out the ladder. I'll see you all outside. All right, now let's head over to the other Zeus. We'll talk a little bit about that. It's not really a docking port. It's more of an airlock. Save your questions for the end, by the way, if you have questions. I'll do my best to answer those at the end if you have burning questions. Try to keep them about lore, though, because... All right, the ES. So this is the basic version of the Zeus. You'll see when we look inside of it, you'll see the difference. Cargo bay is a little smaller. It's a little shorter. It doesn't hold nearly as much. But its mess hall is a little bigger. And its crew quarters is about the same, I think. It's a little bigger. Yeah, maybe a little bigger. Its forward area is about the same. And the same 3 seats. So it's mostly the same as the... let's get the airlock to work here.
Attention visitors to the intergalactic aerospace.
There we go. All right. Go run out the back and the front. All right. Now let's head over to the Hall 3, I think is what this is. Yeah, let's head this direction. Come join me this direction. We're heading to Hall 3. Yes, the CL also has a tractor beam built into it. It's a hauling variant. The ES is more of the basic variant, kind of a do-it-all thing. All right, we are here. This is Aegis. CIG, get your stuff together. All right. Got some constellations. Let's talk about the constellation program. So after the retirement of the Zeus, we have the creation of the constellations. So the original Zeus was replaced by these possibly as... the original constellation was possibly in versions of it had possibly been continuing on through hundreds of years, though we know for sure that the constellation, as it stands, was built specifically as a means to sort of bring RSI into the modern age. It was first created in 2712, and the first version was called the Mark I, had only 2 people in the cockpit. It lacked the snub fighter. It was a very basic version compared to the future versions. And after that, we had another model which came out. With the Mark II came out with the Merlin itself. The Merlin was built by Kruger, which was one of their parts manufacturers who had been looking to increase their range beyond just parts to build actual products. And so when the Mark II was being concepted, Kruger came forward and suggested that they build a snub ship for the Connie. And since RSI relied on Kruger's parts, they said sure. And so that's how we got the Kruger Archimedes and the Merlin, both of which we'll talk a little bit more about tomorrow. This may have been built in 2918, so it may have been a while. It seems like it's probably more likely that it was built sometime in the 28th century or the 29th century. We know the Mark III came out in the early 30th century, and it was the basis for the constellation Phoenix, which we'll talk about. And the Mark IV is the one we're seeing right now, which was first planned for release in 2942, but was pushed back to 2944. So these were 2945 constellations as these were built. So this is the Aquila. This is the exploration version. This was specifically built with extra range in terms of its fuel tanks, as well as a unique, is this one a unique cockpit? Yeah, it's a unique cockpit and better sensors. With that, let's move over to the right. Let's go to the right. Ah, this is the Taurus, isn't it? The Taurus. So the RSI Taurus. The constellation Taurus is was originally started life as what's called the Connie Light, which was a version of the constellation that had stripped down all its parts and was just like a budget Connie. The problem was that it being a budget Connie, it got the reputation as being they called it the plastic Connie. It was the cheap Connie, the one that nobody wanted. Why would you buy the cheap version when you can get the better one? So it didn't do well, but in the, I believe it was Mark II or Mark III versions, they had a chance to take a stab at it again, and they came up with the constellation Taurus. Because you see, in the aftermath of the Meser era, there was a call for cargo vessels. At the time, the whole series had been sweeping through the Empire in terms of revolutionizing how cargo was moved. The problem about the whole series was that all the cargo was on the exterior, and after a series of accidents that happened in sometime in the mid 29th century, where docking errors in the holds were, or the whole software malfunctioned, caused a lot of accidents and crashes, which meant that cargo would spill out into space and block space lanes. So they had to completely recall a bunch of the whole series to get them fixed. And this was when RSI decided to fully commit to the Taurus and would eventually release the Constellation Taurus series, which absolutely killed, because it said, hey, we have all the advantages of the cargo system that was revolutionized by the whole series, but we also have interior cargo bays, and were made by RSI. So the Taurus became a very popular one just because it is a extended cargo variant. It has more cargo than the standard Connies, any of the standard Connies, and has a shielded bay in the back for even more protection if you need to. With that, let's move on to the next one over here. I believe this is the Phoenix? Andromeda. So this is the base variant. This is the standard stock variant. All Connies kind of start from this whole as a framework. The thing that makes the Connie stand out is its cargo capacity, its small crew count, but also its firepower and its ability to carry the little stub craft. These guns, I believe it's size 5s that these things can have, all pilot controlled. That may change in the future, who knows? But on top of that, they have 2 turrets, which I believe have size 3 guns, maybe size 2, but 2 turrets, top and bottom, and a stub craft, as well as carrying a lot of cargo for its size, and having crew quarters all wrapped into one package. It is a great sort of utility ship for that sort of large-sized vessels, which is why it did pretty well. And lastly, we have the Phoenix. The Phoenix is an interesting example because the Phoenix was built as a dare. You see, originally the Phoenix was developed not by RSI, but by a news program, or a television program, effectively. A television program, a sort of a reality TV show concept, had a challenge to turn a constellation into a luxury vessel. And this challenge that took place on Spectrum inspired the RSI developers, who said, could we do that ourselves? And so they took it upon themselves to try to recreate and see if they could improve upon this sort of reality TV show concept. And what came out of it was the Constellation Phoenix. All of the same Connie features you come to learn and love, with an additional luxury cargo interior, luxury cargo, or luxury bed spaces, a hot tub, luxury seats for traveling, a full bar, the ability to put a full piano in if you wanted to, and it has its own point defense turrets, so you can even be defended against that. So yeah, that's the Constellation Phoenix. All right, let's go from that to one of the more modern ones. Now, this is not confirmed, but I will say, welcome to the stage, the Black Widow. There is not a lot of lore for the Scorpius. We know that it's been in testing for several years now, almost a decade, before it was fully released. But it's my opinion that this was the RSI's entry into the next great starfighter competition. Competition which was specifically designed to replace the Hornet to deal with larger ships like the... Oh, I forgot the name of it. We talked about it last live stream.
The Glaive?
Not the Glaive. It was the heavy fighter by the Vandul. It's the one that the leader hopped in and flew away on. It's like the Stinger, I think. The Vandal Stinger heavy ship was needed. It needed to counter that, and so there were several companies that added their own entries. You had the Aegis entered the Dogfighter 3000. Anvil entered the F8 Lightning, and RSI entered the Black Widow, the RSI Black Widow. Now, the F8 Lightning would win, but both the Dogfighter 3000, which in my belief would eventually be renamed the Saber to be released, and the Black Widow, which is the Scorpius, would eventually come out. Both of them taking the route of, instead of doing strictly military, they actually turned to the civilian market. The Scorpius was given to the Bremen Defense Force for free to test, which had glowing recommendations. Several members of the civilian defense forces were given versions, as well as advocacy agents and some military squadrons, like the test squadron was given them. All of which to test and to work out the kinks and the details, but also to gain accolades, so that when they eventually wanted to promote this as a military vessel to the UAE, they were able to point to all of these different testimonies from various people from around the empire to do so. And just because of the militia mobilization initiative, these were also sold to the common person. These are two-seat heavy fighters, borrowing a lot of concepts from something like the Hurricane, where you have a quad turret that can be maneuvered by the co-pilot, while the main pilot focuses on flying, though it does have minor weapons as well. It folds up backwards in this sort of kind of almost acorn style configuration. This allows it to fit in a lot more spaces. In fact, you can fit two of these onto a Perseus or Polaris pretty easily. All right, with that, let's move on to the other one, which was the Antares. This is a sort of a stripped-down version of the Scorpius that replaces the back gun with a EMP. So this is kind of sort of an interdiction version that they built, which we may still see more variants of the Antares or the Scorpius in the future as well. That's pretty much all it is. All right, let's move on to the next hall. Does it have a QED as well? Awesome. The Andromeda also has a metric shit ton of missiles. Yeah, it's just an all-arounder. And if you haven't had a chance to check out these little halls, each of the guilds has kind of brought their own display of how these ships function. So this is the Interstellar Cargo Guild, I believe. Interstellar Transport Guild. That's the that kind of built this frame to show you how cargo's moved. Oh, here we go. The Auroras. So, fun story. Case Aerospace, who I mentioned before, Leonard Case would go on to what originally was working for RSI, and when he did, he built a ship which would be the forebearer of the Aurora line. The idea behind that I think it was called the Cosmos Loop. I'm probably wrong on that. I think that's the actual one that he built with his own company. But when he was working at RSI, his goal was to build a ship that was luxurious, but also easy and fun to fly. His main focus was trying to make ease of use. Anyone could fly. And while he left RSI after producing the one ship for them, his impact was so great that his ship would inspire the RSI team to create the Aurora lineup in 2659. So for hundreds of years, the Aurora has been the standard starting ship for pretty much everyone in the verse. These ships have been used for everything from militia patrol, cargo moving, exploration, or just day-to-day travel. Pretty much everyone's first ship in the verse is a Aurora, much to the chagrin of Silas Kerner from Consolidated Outland, but we'll talk about him tomorrow, a little bit about his railing against the Aurora. Now, there's different variants, obviously, because the Aurora's been around for a long time. There are, I believe, 5 that are purposes. This is probably the most well-known one, called the Legionnaire. So the Anvil Legionnaire, fun fact, was nicknamed that, was given that name because it was a program that they were hiding the fact that it was a boarding ship by saying, no, the Legionnaire program is simply to advise RSI on building a better Aurora Legionnaire. But this is a militia ship. It's designed with a little bit better accommodations, more guns, stock, and a sweet skin. Then we have this is the MR? Yes, the MR. So this is the standard stock version of the Aurora. The basic version that everyone should start off with. This is the one you see the most common in the verse. It has some guns, but like all Auroras, it has a bed, but it's mostly just a kind of get you to point A, point B kind of ship. This is the ES, right? Or the LX. So this is the luxury version. I know it sounds funny to have a luxury version of a starter ship, but it is. It's technically a Pathfinder, so it's designed as a little bit more exploration in its use. But it has a little bit better like range than your typical Aurora, but not by much, as far as I understand. And it may not actually be reflective in game yet. But yeah, this is just a kind of a small one-person Pathfinder. All right, let's go beyond the Mantis and come over here. All right. Every car has a budget manufacturer, a budget version of it, and the every spaceship is no different. This is the ES. This is if you absolutely positively want a spaceship for as cheap as possible, you can get it here. This is a very, very inexpensive ship, even in the verse. It is a cut-down version of the Aurora. It's the everyman's everyman sort of ship. It has pretty much everything you need for Aurora, other than with no frills. The seat is uncomfortable. The guns are downgraded. Everything is basic. I think it even takes the missiles away from this thing, so, yeah. And then we have the CL, the Clipper. Just like the Zeus Clipper, the Aurora Clipper is the cargo variant. It actually holds more cargo than your typical Aurora. I believe it is 8 SCU? Or is it 6 SCU? Yeah, it doesn't say here. Slightly more. It's not an absolute ton more, but a slight more cargo than your typical Aurora does. So being able to move a little bit more cargo if you want to do that. All right, with that, let's move over here to the Mantis. Yeah, it's the ES stands for the Essentials. So the RSI Mantis, there's no real lore behind it. We don't know how long it's been in production, but we do know it's a quantum enforcement ship. It's designed to function with the UEE military and UEE advocacy to snare passing ships, especially pirate ships, and prevent other ships from fleeing. It is a combination QED and quantum snare ship. It's the only snare ship in the game right now. We'll possibly see more, but it is a very utilitarian ship. If you look inside, which I'll go inside real quickly because it's probably very... any really go up, can we?
Yeah, I don't think we will fit all of that elevator.
Yeah, so I said just do it myself. There we go. So it's very bare bones in here. It's got a bed, it's got some storage, it's got some components, and that's about it. Most of this comes from its QED device, which is back here. You can't really see it because it's covered in by this casing. This back area is mostly just a quantum enforcement device. Don't ask me how the quantum enforcement devices work. I don't know. It's not really been fully explained. My theory is that it uses some quantanium pulled from the engines to counteract the effect of quantanium on other engines. So simply, you can think of it as kind of like reversing the polarity, where it's causing a fake mass signature so that the emergency systems on board quantum ships, quantum drives, activate to prevent you from smashing into another ship, which then pulls you out of quantum. So, but if that's not the case, space magic. Let's move on. I think that's it. Let's go downstairs and talk about the descendants of the Marine Assault Vehicle. I just stepped over a dead body. I did.
Yep. only at IAE.
All right, the Ursa. So, the original Ursa was known as the Marine Rapid Assault Vehicle, I believe. The MRV. MRAV, MRAV. Look it up real quick to make sure I have it proper.
Attention visitors to the intergalactic aerospace system. Please take care
Yeah, the Rapid Deployment Vehicle. So the RDV. The Marine RDV was developed for the UEE Marines. The Ursa was the civilian version of it. So you can see some of that elements with all of the Ursas having some sort of defensive complement with some sort of guns attached to them. And then the back, especially the main Ursa, you can see it actually holds, I believe, four people in the back, plus the pilot or the operator and the co-pilot, so a total of 6 folks. Plus it has a gun rack on it and other storage devices with lockers and other things like that. And there's the gun racks right here. And then we have another version here, the Ursa Medivac. So the Nursa, as the community has called it, is a size 3 bed inside of an Ursa. Allows it to kind of work like an ambulance. So these are auto ducts, which are revolutionary. We'll talk a little bit about them when we talk about Drake, because they're really the first adapters of this technology to the common market. This technology has changed how medicine is practiced in the UAE, because it allows for instant heal of, just this one, of just most moderate injuries that exist, and also allows for a full regen capability if required, though there may be some limitations to that in the future. Plus, it has a little seat for the medic, and of course the pilot and a co-pilot if need be. And last but not least, we have the luxury variant. This is the one that was developed specifically with the Phoenix in mind. Lynx. It has 2 luxury seats in the back, plus a pilot and co-pilot seat. It even has champagne, which I'm sure somebody has stolen. And back here, they stole from the bucket, of course. It has the same sort of gun racks that you would see on other other Ursas. Other components, but it's just kind of a little luxury ship, a luxury vehicle. All right, with that, let's go and see the concept ships of RSI, the ships that have not quite made it to the verse, some of whom have a long history. All right, the Perseus. Now, the Perseus was first built in 2520. It's part of the new wave of the Navy, built in the early 26th century, specifically in response to the first contact with the Banu. This ship was designed as a psychological weapon before anything else. Its design was intended to make it look mean, and almost everyone misidentifies the size of this thing, even when you're given perspective from it, because it just looks so mean. It looks so much like a military vessel. When I tell you this is smaller than a hammerhead, you might be able to get the idea. Now, the unique thing about the Perseus is that the Perseus was built in a time period before humanity had good access to shields. Now, it's likely that humanity did have some access to energy shields, but because of the cost of energy and heating and cooling that were required to run them, only the largest ships of humanity could afford them. So this ship, again, a little bit smaller than the Hammerhead, did not have shields. So as a result, it compensated for this by having a lot of armor and a built-in PDC, a remote turret, which could also be functioned as could switch over to PDC control. For its main armament, it swings 4 size 7 cannons, bespoke size 7 ballistic cannons, designed to take on smaller ships. It's called the Subcap Slayer for a reason. It was designed to bully smaller ships, or its size and slightly smaller, rather than punch up. Though it does mean that those size 7 cannons do allow for it to do some damage against heavier targets, but it is slow because of its armor and not as maneuverable, so it's probably not the best thing to kind of throw into a fight with larger ships. But it is tough that it can take a lot of hits. The most famous of the Perseuses is probably the UES Achilles. Now, these ships had been built in the early 26th century and served admirably throughout the Meso era, serving as patrol vessels that move along the human-Xian border. Again, often acting as an intimidation tactic. In fact, when the humanity first introduced the United Earth Credit, the UEC, there was a riot on Sestulus and Jata in the Davian system, and this riot was concerned over the implementation of this new currency, because it would devalue the currencies that people already had, and threatened to interrupt the overall economic value of many systems. And Davian, being a young system, was worried that their main focus was trade with the Banu. They were worried that they might be overshadowed by other systems, so there was many protests about this implementation of the UEC. This would eventually go nasty when a security guard in front of the SSN TV network, news station, got nervous when a bunch of protesters encroached him and opened fire on the crowd. This act of violence caused the protests to turn into a riot, and they began to destroy the city. The UAE had to dispatch an army unit, which was itself unable to control the riots. When all seemed lost, the Navy sent in a single Perseus, and that Perseus arrived over the city and parked over the top of the city. And that arrival of this brand new ship scared the protesters into giving up. Most just went home because they thought that this ship, this big, impressive, mean-looking ship, was about to just level the city with its big cannons. And as a result, not a shot was fired, yet they put down an entire riot. This is a consistent theme with this ship, being able to intimidate most pirates or other enemies, as well as to make at least the Xian think twice before approaching it because of its larger cannons. while it did serve admirably, it also ended up being out of date by the time the end of the Measure era happened. So only a handful were still left in service in the 30th century. Most just waiting to be fully driven out of system. Wait, does that mean the modern Perseus also has no shields? No, the modern Perseus does have shields. The shields were retrofitted on it after the First Tavarn War. So the modern Perseus does have shields. It's just the design of it never changed. So it is always heavy. It has more armor than a ship its size should. And this brings us to the Oberon invasion. So the liberation of Oberon, or the defense of Oberon, the Battle of Oberon, happened in the wake of the Battle of Vega. With the war being declared against the Vandul, Admiral Bishop had many more forces to muster, including the vaunted RSI Retribution. Well, not RSI, but the Retribution. The Retribution is a behemoth. It's a kingship slayer. It was brought to the Oberon system because of reports of a possible Vandul invasion. So they jumped the fleet into this region and mustered absolutely every ship they had at their disposal, including a series of Perseuses, well beyond their lifespan, but they were still needed. Everything was all hands on deck. And a single Perseus called the UES Achilles was put on the line to defend the fleet. And the Vandul pushed that Perseus hard, without any other forces being able to support this Perseus. It was forced to take on multiple destroyers, and it won. Its armor was too thick for the Vandul to break through, and its guns were just big enough to punch holes through these destroyers. So this tiny little gunboat was able to take down ships twice its size. It was never intended to fight. Unfortunately, the Achilles did end up being taken out itself. It wasn't able to survive the battle. But the last stand of the Achilles is what inspired Admiral Bishop to request RSI resume production of the Perseus. So Project Perseus was introduced after the Battle of Oberon, where the RSI engineers sought to update the design of the Perseus to keep the same things that made it so dangerous in the Battle of Oberon, but expand its roles beyond just military, but also into civilian market. That is where the Perseus is right now, being retrofitted and being built brand new for the first time in 500 years on the RSI factories to help bring order to the universe, as it were. So, it's one of my favorite ships because its lore is pretty neat. The controversial ship, the Galaxy. Now, there's not a lot of lore behind the Galaxy. It is a modular ship designed to take advantage of modularity in game, but in lore, I'd assume it has something to do with modular designs like the Caterpillar doing very, very well in most markets, and the Retaliator's modular design doing very well. So RSI felt that they could kind of put their own spin on this. The Galaxy is an industrial ship through and through, with a large modular bay, which can be swapped out for cargo, medical, or refinery capabilities. And future versions, future modules that are being developed for the Galaxy include a manufacturing module and a base building module with a large base building drone to be able to function with it. All right. Let's move on. We got a couple more. The Arastra. Again, not a lot of lore on this one. Likely a modern ship to take advantage of the boom in mining that's been taking place. Thanks to the discovery of the Chessex lode by a MISC prospector, there has been a wave of new interest in mining, especially from your average citizen, your average civilian, wanted to get involved in mining because of the vast wealth capabilities, especially in the smaller regions, that huge mining platforms. Well, we'll talk about the RSI Orion here in a moment. The Arastra was designed to meet the demand of consumers, kind of a mining company. So effectively, a small group of people, a small company could buy one Arastra and use that Arastra to get anything they wanted, including ground mining if necessary. This is a 4-person ship. It's got a bunch of 3 different mining heads. It has a bay. It has its own processing plant inside to be able to refine or to at least sort out the different materials. And it has a large vehicle bay that can hold rocks to go out and do rock mining and hand mining if need be. Oh, we don't even have the Orion. The Apollo. This one's neat. This one was probably built in 2907. It was built during a time when the Cutlass Red was absolutely dominating the market. And RSI, the oldest ship manufacturer in the universe, was getting kind of overshot. It was kind of being overshadowed by this young upstart. And was absolutely revolutionizing because of the auto dock. The Bioticorp auto dock is, like I said, a revolution in how wounds are healed in the verse. And so they decided that they needed to get in on the action themselves. So they're afraid that Drake might actually take government contracts from them. They developed the Apollo. This is a flying clinic with modular bays that can swap out for one. Each bay can be fitted with at least with one size 1 bed, or 2 size 2 beds, or 3 size 3 beds, with 2 bays possible. So you can have one bay have 3 size 3s, one bay have 1 size 1, or both bays have size 1s, or 1 size 2, or 2 size 2s, or 2 size 3s. Doesn't matter. Mix and match capabilities. And the thing that really makes it stand out is its drone. It has a remote operated drone which can recover downed pilots or people in space very easily and return them back. So it has a multitude of uses, especially amongst the military, who've been using this exclusively as their frontline transport or medical transport since the 30th century. It's probably most famous for the show called Astromedics on Spectrum, which ran from 2907 to 2914, and it revolved around a medical team on an Apollo-class ship called the Cathara. And I believe it's the Medevac is the variant that's done in honor of Astromedics, which did a series of TV series and also some movies that were done from it. It was a fantastic show that inspired them to make even more of them. So, all right. With that, let's head on over and see if there's any questions about the lore of RSI or other lore topics. All right, if you're here on the floor or if you're on chat, if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll try to answer them for you. I find the idea strange for armor that the ship of its size and armor is either thin or thick, whatever the size ship. Malakina, the idea is more that ships typically don't have too much armor on them, because if you have too much armor, you slow down your speed. It's classic naval ideas, that if you have armor, it'll protect you, but it'll also make you slower and easier to hit. So armor can be helpful, but it can also make you the target rather than making you survive easier. Does it have 2 drones? That had 1 drone. You're good to know. But its drone's capability is what makes it stand out. The armor weapon speed triangle, yeah. It has armor and weapons, not speed. Question: we have Atmo processors and geoterraforming, and geoterraforming. Do you think the science and research profession will open up the ability to terraform planets? I mean, possibly, but even in modern lore, to terraform a planet can take a decade. It used to take 60 years. Now it takes anywhere between 5 and 10 years, depending on the planet. So, yes, but I don't think CIG is going to accelerate that process. And it can easily be reversed. It's a very delicate process. What would you choose? A Perseus, Galaxy, Orion, 890, a Pioneer, and why? A Perseus. Just because I like the role. None of those other ones I'd really use that often, and I think the Perseus is a great, got a couple people together, go kill things sort of thing. Question, can you give the history lore of the Orion? We don't know a lot about the Orion, other than it is a mining platform, which means that it's designed to specifically mine in space. It takes the larger asteroids and chews them up and basically digests them, and is able to not just digest and process them, but refine all of them and turn them into other materials. It is a very thorough ship. I believe it even has drones that it can attach to it. There was mentions at one point of the Orion being able to carry the spider drones made by Greycat, I think. I always forget the name of them. Yeah, chat won't remember it. it's popular enough that people remember it. The Cygnus, thank you, the Cygnus mining drones, which are semi-autonomous. If a brand new RSI ship were to come out, which roles would it fill? I am of the argument that RSI needs to fill every role because it's RSI. They would make sense to making everything because they have made everything. The only ships that we haven't seen RSI build are salvage ships, which I think they could fill pretty easily. Let's see, what are some of the other ones? Are racing ships? They haven't built any racing ships as far as I know. That would be another good one. Luxury ships other than the Phoenix, like a dedicated luxury brand. There's lots of mentions of dedicated luxury ships that exist made by RSI. Let's see. They have a bounty hunting ship, I guess, with the Marquis, but the Zeus Marquis, but that'd be another one, maybe. Maybe a dedicated base building ship. That would make sense. Maybe like a Pioneer equivalent. There's a lot of that they could do.
Gathering the latest and greatest from manufacturers across the empire. The Intergalactic Aerospace Expo is where spaceship.
Do you think the Perseus, which will be available to players, will be classified as military and locked behind rep for purchase in game? Possibly, because it is a ship being sold through the Militia Mobilization Initiative. So any ship that's being sold through that might be locked. So. Did RSI pioneer the quantum entanglement drive, QED? And is there a defense in lore against QEDs? Perhaps a blockade runners in lore? No, we have no lore about the QEDs who developed them. I wouldn't be surprised if RSI did, though it's important to note that while RSI did invent the first jump drive, they didn't popularize it. That was Tarsus. Tarsus was the one who actually built the most popular versions of the quantum drive and jump drive, I should say. But I could definitely see them having developed it, but you know, they're not. RSI has a tendency, especially modern RSI, to instead of build something new, being the first people to build something, they typically are the first people to improve it. They have that kind of Apple syndrome where they don't make it, but they'll take it and make it the best you've ever seen, sort of thing, like the most consumer friendly version. Question, is the RSI Aurora going to have an update in the future? God, I hope so. So in theory, the Orion can make the whole Levski that was in, the hole that Levski was in. Or is that a different method? Possibly. In theory, it could definitely do that. They could offer a shipbuilding platform for in space, which would be independent of the space station. It's kind of what the Galaxy is, because the Galaxy will have a manufacturing module, and that is a big area for a manufacturing module. It's probably going to be a large manufacturing module. So almost certainly you could build a ship on the Galaxy with the right resources. Yeah, RSI does need a refueling ship. It does need a rearming ship and a repair ship. Those are other good ones too. Well, Levski's borehole got way bigger. Well, I mean, an Orion could have easily spent years chipping away at that borehole. No, yeah, no signs of the manufacturing module this year. Nope, it's probably not going to be sold until it's ready in game. You mentioned at the beginning that the tour RSI suffered with the fall of measures. What contract restitution? They suffered with the measures. They actually improved because of the fall of the measures. So they weren't an aegis measure sort of thing. They didn't suffer nearly as much because during the events that happened with Anthony Tanaka's death, they actually basically said, hey, that wasn't us. It wasn't one of our manufacturers. And we're going to do a intensive deep dive and to make sure none of our manufacturers are treating children like this. And that pissed off the measures super fiercely. So any government contracts they had were canceled because of that. But RSI got a good reputation. And that's basically what saved RSI. Is when the measures fell, RSI was stupid clean, like wicked clean because of that. And so they were the ones who were able to step in and build new ships, capital ships, which had been entirely controlled by Aegis after Ivar Messer came in.
First step to fun is safety. Walk, don't run while exploring the halls.
CHE has hinted that the Perseus will probably grow during its actual modeling and implementation. How much do you think it'll expand? I think they'll put another gun turret on it. Probably not much. I think it'll probably be a little bit bigger than the Hammerhead, but yeah.
This is a friendly reminder. Stay aware of your surroundings and keep an eye on your teams at all times.
What would you see as an RSI competitor to Kraken, light to medium carrier role? I mean, you want me to say the Pegasus, Red Martian. I'm pretty sure that's what you want me to say. But yeah, the Pegasus. The Pegasus is a lore ship that we know exists even in lore. The patch for the Pegasus with the picture of the Pegasus is still on one of the characters in Squadron 42. So we do know that Pegasus does exist in lore. My guess is that it was replaced by the Bengal variant, the Bengal-derived light carrier that was shown off in the Squadron 42 demo. They felt the winds changing and cut their ties before things fell apart. To be fair, they didn't cut anything. It was the Mezzers who intentionally cut the ties. RSI just said, all right. The cruiser hull, yeah. The one that's built, it's a cruiser and a light carrier or an escort carrier. No Pegasus, just Thicasus. And yes, I wouldn't be able to tell you anything about the Bengal, but the Bengal is also made by RSI. The Bengal and the cruiser that we saw and the carriers we saw in Squadron 42's demo, those are all RSI ships. The Bengal is a great example of RSI, new RSI, because that's probably the first RSI supercarrier built since the First Tavaran War. Well, since probably ever. Because I don't think they didn't have supercarriers and they didn't have carriers at all in the First Tavaran War. Because all of the fighters were mostly launched by a tube. Question. The Kruger RSI parasite ship relationship is unique in Star Citizen currently. Is there any other instances of parasites amongst other ships of the verse other than the King/Stinger combo? Yeah, there's the Banning Merchantman. It has the Defender. It has a bespoke Defender bay. You have the Anvil Carrack has its own bay for the Pisces. And of course, Misk has a dedicated Fury bay. So, yeah. Question. Paul, I got a question you might know the answer to. It's about the Javelin named the UES Morningstar, which is part of the 2nd Fleet defending Vega 2 under Admiral Bishop, Squad 42 setting. Is the captain of the Morningstar known? McLaren is in the Gauntlet, white on the Stanton, and interest. Yeah, we don't know who the captain of the Morningstar is unless it's been displayed somewhere in the Squadron 42 demo. The Morningstar that's the first time it's mentioned, but it is a Javelin class. There's a very few captains we know about in the verse in terms of their ships. Singh, Captain Singh is the captain of the Warhammer. Any other questions?
Stay aware of your surroundings. Keep an eye on your belongings at all times.
I will say RSI is one of my favorite manufacturers simply because of its sort of aesthetic. It's very clean aesthetic. It's very corporate aesthetic, but I've said this before, and I think this is really where they're going with it. It is the Utopia Planitia style. It is like if the the Star Citizen version of Star Trek ships, of the Star Trek Federation ships.
Find a new favorite? Then why not take it for a test flight? Many of the vehicles on display at this year's IAE are conveniently available to rent.
Does RSI make any boats? But they probably do, honestly. There's not much they don't do. Plus, RSI gave the middle finger to the Mezzers. They're one of the few companies out there that is somewhat nebulous. Like, they were started off as this great innovative force in humanity, but once jump drives had been, or jump travel had been discovered, they basically cordoned off jump travel and cornered the market on jump travel, which meant it was even harder to get out of the solar system. And it took a group of two enterprising nav jumpers, space enthusiasts who were working on a station at the jump point itself, who managed to get a hold of a RSI jump drive to figure out, oh, this is just a NIC, which is a term used by nav jumpers as how you build a quantum drive, or jump drive, because jump drives up to that point were just modified quantum drives. You would modify your quantum drive with the right resonance frequency to interact with the wormhole, the jump point, and that would open and close it. The problem is that it's kind of like art rather than a science to do a NIC. So you can think of it as like taking a wrench and then just beating your quantum drive in the right way so that it would function that way. So what RSI did was they didn't build some brand new drive that functioned everything. They literally just perfected the NIC. They figured out how to modify a quantum drive through an external force to make it more reasonable for the jump drives. And so once they figured that out, they figured out how they perfected the NIC, and these two built their own jump drive. It was the like size of a cargo bay, like it fit the entire cargo bay of a Zeus, but you could attach it to your jump drive, your quantum drive, rather than having to put a bespoke jump drive technology built into it, which meant that you could attach a jump drive to a ship, meaning all modern ships at the time could use a jump drive. And it was RSI was effectively, they knew what they were doing, and they had restricted exploration. They were doing it to keep themselves in business. So they got caught. They got mad. They sued the two who founded Tarsus. They lost, and they decided, well, the jig's up. We should just do it ourselves. So I have a suggestion. RSI needs a fishing boat. Hey, I can see it. Question: RSI contributes a lot to the UEE. Would they even be the same without RSI? Nope. RSI has effectively built the modern UEE military and modern UEE infrastructure. Like, without them starting everything, nobody would be where they are. Was a pioneer in the field. Yes, they no longer are really pioneers. They do sometimes they do, but they're mostly taking other people's discoveries and then improving them. It would be amazing if they made actual starship trips. Yeah, I think they could get close enough to without having to like cross the line. My argument is for them to take the Constellation and redo it as the NX-01, the ship from Enterprise. Just give me the NX-01, CIG. Just turn the Connie into the NX-01 and I'll be fine. Obviously not the same scale, but like the same styling. If RSI are the manufacturers that polish existing tech, what do you think is missing from the tech lineup? What are the speculations regarding RSI concepts? RSI can do whatever it wants. Like I said, it's like in terms of the future, I would see CIG with RSI. I couldn't tell you. I don't know CIG's mind. What I would say is that CIG needs to probably focus on like a racing ship and a salvage ship from RSI. I think those two would be key. We talked about the Pegasus earlier. Yeah, it is still a lore ship. It is a ship in lore, and the design is still the same. But it's likely, my guess at this point is it's likely an older vessel, a vessel that was replaced by the cruiser framed RSI ships we saw at the Battle of Vega. Okay, but does RSI makes toilet paper? I think they do actually. They should rework the Aurora. Such an old design needs some love and maybe a redesign. Watch the Inforunners video we did. I'm on it on RSI Day. We talk extensively about what the Aurora needs. So RSI products have a massive range from spaceships to Q drives and entire spacecrafts. They even make underwear. So RSI has its own racing team. It's been mentioned in lore multiple times, which is, I'm surprised that they haven't done an RSI racing ship because, but now that RSI is getting the spotlight with a lot of the stuff being done, I could see it in the future being done. So, Space Unilever. As ever, great tour tonight. Thank you there, Agbard. The Aurora RC. Hey, I think they need to update the Aurora because the Aurora is the most important ship in the game. It is the starting ship for the vast majority of people. It's going to be the first impression that people have of the game. And it doesn't need to be good. It just needs to work. And right now it doesn't work very well, and it's not really built with the modern idea of what Star Citizen is. I think it needs a full overhaul. I think that is a non-controversial opinion. I don't think there's a single person who plays Star Citizen who doesn't look at the Aurora and goes, that needs to be redone. RSI the breakfast cereal, RSI the toilet paper, RSI the flamethrower. Yeah. Oh yeah, you're evil, all right. You're a villain, all right, but you're not a super villain. What's the difference? Presentation. Yeah, you're a manufacturer, but you're not a major manufacturer. What's the difference? Presentation. Every ship needs updates before 1.0. That's the difference is that there are other ships that need sort of small updates, and then there are ships that need large updates. There are very few ships that need a full overhaul. And I think the Aurora is there. I think the Aurora needs a ground up, from the start, resketch, reconcept, using the original Aurora as its design basis, but making it work with the modern game. They need to take what they did with the Cutter and then do that with the Aurora. Not really much CIG can do with the current Aurora, bring it up to standard. There's really not much left. There's no storage on the Aurora. It should have at least some basic storage. I'm not asking for a suit locker, but a gun rack, maybe. A locker where you can store stuff in. Aurora Mark 210, 2 to 10, essentially. I mean, the Aurora's been around since 2659. So there is a lot of versions of the Aurora. They don't even need a toilet. Just a bed a storage capacity, that kind of thing. I feel like you need a toilet before you need a bed. Maybe I'm wrong. Just pee in a cup. Plenty of vehicles with beds that don't have toilets on them. You should do more of a professor's beard. Like, what is a professor's beard? Closer shave or longer? Is the Kraken being worked on? Almost certainly, because they're working on the ironclad. So if they're working on the ironclad, then they're working on the Kraken. Not in a immediate sense, but in a some sense. Maybe a mini Zeus. Well, that was the other thing we talked about in the Inforunners, was that there is a space for an advanced starter from RSI. Intrepid, Titan, that sort of range. There's no ship in RSI that's that range. Even Consolidated Outland has a advanced starter. They have a basic starter, and then they have the advanced starter with the Nomad. So, yeah, it is. It's in the same level as the Cutter, which is also an advanced starter. Don't believe me? Look it up. CIG even calls the Cutter an advanced starter. Should have done neck. It's a little longer now. Longer in the chin, shaved on the neck. Well, I'll have to talk to my wife about that. Many people think the Polaris is the shiz, but from a military ship design perspective, how do you rate it? Functionality? I think it works what it's supposed to, the way it's supposed to do. I think the main limitations it has is that it's not built to handle everything. It's not going to function in every situation. For instance, it has firepower, but not quite enough firepower to take on a capital ship in terms of bringing down its shields. It can and will bring down the shields, but it requires a very concentrated firepower to do so, and it doesn't have enough firepower to kill a capital ship unless it uses its torpedoes. So it needs to not only be able to knock down the shields of a capital ship, disable its maneuverability, but also disable its maneuverability, but also its PDCs, so that you can actually get torpedoes through. It doesn't really work as an anti-capital ship vessel unless it has support. Its main drawback is it needs support, but that's kind of how all military vessels and military in general works. Tanks are big, mean, fearsome things, but without infantry support, they're fucking dead. You know, artillery is good, but if it is the queen of battle, the emperor of the battle, I think I couldn't remember. I think it's king of battle is the term. It's the king of battle, but without spotters, without somebody directing the artillery, and without someone defending the artillery, it's fucked. Unless you can fire torpedoes, dumbfired, no PDCs to shoot them down. That's actually not true, I don't think. King of battle, infantry queen of battle, yeah. Just like in real life, no one can do it alone. Nothing can do solo. It needs support. And the Polaris is like, its strong suits are it can bully smaller ships pretty easily, and its size 10 torpedoes will destroy any ship below its class. But that's it. It needs support for anything bigger. But without a defensive line, the enemy will cook their food on your artillery barrels. Exactly. That's my point. It's like, generally speaking, it has its limitations. It's good. It's probably one of the best ships in game in terms of combat efficiency, and it's really hard to kill, but it's not impossible. A skilled group of fighter pilots could take on a Polaris and win. The IAE video on part 2 said no PDC dumbfire no PDC fire on dumbfire. They said that, but that was recorded earlier, and I think they actually changed that afterwards. I thought the Polaris punches way above its weight class. It does, but without support, there's no way a Polaris can get its torpedoes locked on and fired. A Polaris was designed to kill king ships, but not a Polaris. Polari, multiple Polarises. You can kill an Idris with a Polaris right now, but if the Idris gets a shot off with its main cannon on you, you're cooked. Kraken will be similar. It seems fairly vulnerable without fighter support. I mean, that's why it's a carrier. All carriers are vulnerable without fighter support. It carries its own defenses with it, though. That's a little bit easier. One of the QA interviewed confirmed that they did that interview weeks and weeks ago. Yeah, so it was a long time ago before when they took that interview. Things have changed since then. Back then, when it was originally released, it wouldn't even target other ships. Now, I think they do, and then they kind of pulled it back, so. It's a Polaris fleet with hammerhead support. Yeah, the actual like lineup, I would say, is you have a Perseus acts as like a tank, tough, hard to kill, but if you don't pay attention to it, it will eat your lunch. The hammerhead acts as to clear like ads as need to be. It kind of punches down a little bit more. The Polaris will do damage, like straight damage dealer, but it needs either the Perseus or the hammerhead to knock out like the defensive turrets or the engines using ballistic weapons. And then when a Nautilus comes out, the Nautilus kind of restricting movement by deploying mines behind or around enemies to prevent them from maneuvering. And if they do get too close, then they get a size 9 torpedo or size 5 torpedo to the face. So. Remember, it took a Squadron 42 and 106th to take down a Kingship shields and systems, and the Javelin parked then a Javelin parked into the broadside to finish it off. Yeah. There's no Hall of Orion in the Hall of your IAE because it's undergoing a reconcept. I think they're going to wait to reconcept the Orion once they have the Arastra done or working on it. Could they have the masses? No. They wouldn't. CIG talking to the people? Are you kidding me? They've done unannounced price increases, 2 unannounced price increases, 3 unannounced price increases this entire sale. The thing they said they would do, that they would stop doing, they're doing it again because for whatever reason. What price increases did they do? $5 on the Saber, $5 on the I want to say it was one of the alien ships that they did $5 on. Can't remember which, but there's two $5 increases. And then it may have been the Sulian. It was Cartual. Okay, the Cartual got a $5 increase. And then the Polaris got its like $100 increase. It's now $950, $975, something like that. So it got a significant increase from its 800 like ish, $225 increase. Yeah. So those are the three they did not announce. They were assumed, but CIG never announced them. And CIG did say that they were going to announce any price changes well in the future, and they haven't done that. Polaris does not really count, as they say that for release prices go up without announcing. Okay, I would still say that CIG needs to clarify that then. I do know that you can't just constantly tell people the same thing over and over again, but you kind of have to, because people forget, and some people just aren't around when you see them. So, how much do you think that your Perseus and Orion are going to go up in price when they actually release them? The Orion is going to be double its price. It'll be over $1,000. The Perseus will probably be in the same range. Any other questions about lore? How much do you think the Perseus and Orion are going to go up? All right. Well, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did enjoy this, make sure you hit that follow button here on Twitch. If you're watching this on YouTube, hitting that like button and commenting down below really helps out the channel, because it helps spread out these the knowledge of these sorts of things. I will also ask a question, because I have an idea. If you are interested, would you like a short, 1 to 2 hour video or live stream on Mondays for the AstroHistorian? If you are, let me know in the comments down below, because that's something I want to float the idea of, to be kind of more active to help YouTube, because unfortunately these videos take longer to make. The actual standalone videos take longer to make, because I'm trying to make them longer. So at best, I'll be able to do maybe once a month with these longer videos. And then as a result, the algorithm tends to slow down a little bit with those. So having these sort of semi-frequent live streams can help that a little bit as well. So let me know if you know that. Again, this would be dedicated to just yakking, just talking about lore and other things you might have, questions about lore and that kind of stuff. And of course, subscribe if you enjoyed this content. We do a lore from all over Star Citizen and Squadron 42, but I've also covered lore topics in Titanfall, Starfield, Cyberpunk, and I'm going to be doing a lore primer for the BattleTech / MechWarrior universe coming up soon, so keep your eyes out on that. Would love to have you subscribe and join us for all of these sorts of events, and of course hit the bell icon to be notified when I go live and when these release. Thank you for watching, and like I always say, remember, X is story.